Hello, hello, hello. That wasn't at all weird. Let's get down to business. To defeat the Huns. This is not Mulan, Olivia. Get it together. I just finished reading a novel by Lawrence Hill called Any Known Blood. And by just finished, I mean like 10 minutes ago just finished. Any Known Blood is a novel about a family, 5 generations of Langston Canes. Yes, you hear the story from Langston Cane the first all the way through the 5th, from the 1800s all the way to the mid-90s. So you cover 150 years in this novel. It's very interesting because it's a story about a black family and seeing how, their race affects them to modern day, but you see it on both sides of the border. You see it from a fugitive slave all the way to a man who is wanting to find out more about his ancestry, from slavery through the civil rights in the 60s and beyond. It's quite fascinating. But also the difference between the mid-90s when Langston Cane V is writing his family story to 21 years later in 2016. Man is free, you are able to go do your own thing, but at the same time, how very similar it is in the fact that there's still so much racism, there's still the killings, there's still all sorts of horrible things happening, all because of a person's skin pigment. It makes no sense to me. In my opinion, we're all created equal. We all have the same basic wants and needs. We're all human. Why do we have to judge people based on their skin? I have to say, this book had some really, really long chapters. Most were a decent length, but there were a few that were really, 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 really long. And I can't think of another word for really right now because my brain is fried. But these long chapters, I do understand why they were so long from the author's perspective. And as a reader, I did end up appreciating that it was one solid chapter, as opposed to a bunch of broken up chapters. The story is told from the perspective of Langston Cane V. Langston starts out at the beginning of the novel, he's the screw up of the Langston name. He hasn't lived up to the standards that the name Langston Cane has had to that point. That really bothers him. He's never been able to hold down a real career. He has a failed marriage under his belt. And he has what he considers a very boring government job writing speeches for politicians. Langston sabotages his own career as a speechwriter, which is actually really funny to read about. Anyways, he sabotages his own career, and then he decides, I've always wanted to be a writer, and I'm going to go off and find out my family history like I've always wanted to, and I'm going to write a book. So the story is mainly told from Langston V's perspective. As he learns more about his family, you can take it 2 different ways, as Langston writing from the perspective of whichever Langston he was researching and writing about at the time. But you could also just say it's that Langston's perspective. I personally think it was Langston V writing as one of the other Langstons and telling their story from their perspective as opposed to his own. I don't know how to explain this. It's difficult. For me personally, I connected with the characters. I really wanted to learn about them, their lives, and each Langston was very different from the other. Langston Cane I was a fugitive slave who escaped to Canada and ended up, after about 10 years, I believe, of freedom, he then went back to America. And this was prior to the end of the Civil War that he went back, and he participated in a rather bloody battle. In going back to the States, he left his family back in Canada, his wife and his 3 sons. Langston Cane II was born in Canada, ended up moving to America with his mom after the Civil War had ended. Langston Cane III was born stateside and then went up to Canada, and then went back to America. Then Langston Cane IV was born in America and went up to Canada and stayed in Canada. And then Langston Cane V was born in Canada, raised in Canada, went down to America to research his family, and then ended up going back to Canada at the end of the book. So many Langstons, so little time. It's a lot of back and forth with this family. With this book, there's a lot of characters that you can connect to because you're covering 150 years, and in that 150 years, you don't just get to know one person and the rest through, like, as my great-great-grandfather did this. You get some of that, but then you actually get it more so from that great-great-grandfather's perspective, and I think that's very beautiful. I don't know why I find it beautiful, but I just find it really, really beautiful that he wrote it that way. I liked it because you got to know the people from each Langston's life that way. You got to know them on a more personal level. I really don't know what all I should say about this book because I don't want to give too much away. This book I found entertaining. The perspective and the way the novel was written, I really enjoyed. I'll definitely be reading more of Lawrence Hill's books in the future. There's some moments that happened within the novel that kind of left you like, what? What is happening? Which is always a good thing. Yeah, I don't know that I've said enough about this book, but I also don't want to say too much. I feel like this has been not my best review, and I'm really sorry. I would say if you like history at all, whether it's nonfiction or fictional, this book is a really interesting read that way. If you're just looking for a good story, this is also a pretty decent book for you too. Any Known Blood by Lawrence Hill. Happy reading. Bye!